What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Today, we're going to be breaking down some more of the Colts free agents, talking about their last season, what exactly we should do when it comes to their future with the team. And this time, we're going to start out with our tight end. That is Alie-Cox, 28 years old, and was restricted agent last year. But this year, he's got the chance to hit the open market, and we will see whether or not the Colts take a chance on bringing him back. Cody, what are you immediately thinking here when you think of Alie-Cox?
What I immediately think for Alie-Cox is potential that has not yet been realized, and I don't know if it ever will be realized. I mean, how many years have we said Mo's going to break out this year? No, wait, he's going to break out this year, and he never had. You can point to obviously the inconsistencies, new quarterback every single year, but Alie-Cox has never really shown you consistently that he can be tied in number one. And that's, I think, unfortunately, right now, the stigma he's going to have is like a guy that's got all the physical tools in the world, but just hasn't been able to put it together. Former basketball player, the likes of guys like Jimmy Graham, Tony Gonzalez, stuff like that, those type of mold, but he just has not been able to break that trend and emerge as a true number one tight end. As far as like bringing him back, I do think the Colts do want him back because there are some things he does really well. While he is kind of limited right now in his receiving game, I think he's a really tremendous run blocker, probably the best run blocking tight end on this roster. So I think from that standpoint, the Colts should bring him back. And I think he is the most physically gifted guy. So there still is some potential in there. I just don't know how much more or how much longer you can afford to hope he's going to be your number one tight end. You know what I mean? So I like Mo quite a bit. I mean, I think he's been a great player for the Colts in spurts. The problem is he just hasn't been able to do it consistently. So that's kind of my thoughts on Mo.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth there. Just consistent is an issue, but in spurts, he shows you every other couple games, why he needs to be game planned for every now and again. Alie-Cox, we look at this tight end group and we've been talking about it all off season. We kind of been saying, should the Colts upgrade at this position to get better in the receiving department? Right. So Alie-Cox, occasionally does some good things, but like you said, through the fault of his own and the fault of the team, they just don't do a great mold right now. And Alie-Cox is just having difficulties getting consistent play. But like you said, he's one of the best. He's probably the best overall tight end we have on this roster at the moment. There's questions of Jack Doyle retiring. And Granson, your other tight end that you drafted just this last year, he's still young and still learning. Alie-Cox is the best of both worlds at the moment. So I think it's imperative that the Colts continue to try and keep him around, because whether or not you upgrade at that position or not, he is going to be your number one going forward, at least for the time being, unless you go and sign a big name guy. So be interesting. Don't know how much he's actually going to command when it comes to the tight end market. Ironically enough, I think he was actually the sixth highest paid free agent tight end on the list from this last year, which is kind of funny considering he only got paid $3.3 million last year. So we'll see what he does. Again, the low stats, I don't think he's going to get big bucks anywhere. And, he's 28, he's going to be 29 going into this next season. So he's still in his prime. Hopefully, whatever quarterback the Colts have on the roster, they can start figuring out a way to get Alie-Cox more involved in this offense, especially in the red zone. Let's go to another weapon here, and that is Zach Paschall. We've had Zach Paschall on the show a couple times. We've talked with him personally. Again, embodies what being a Colt is all about. Being physical, doing the dirty work. He's going to be 28 going into next season. Was another guy that's been battling for contracts, started out as an undrafted free agent, and to get where he's at now. We kind of talked about Zach Paschall quite a bit over the last few weeks, Cody. So it's kind of hard to reiterate some of the things that we've been saying about him. But, Zach Paschall's hitting this open market, and we've been talking a lot about this team needing to upgrade. What's your position here again on Zach Paschall moving forward?
I think especially if you do what we said in the tier 1 list, which if you haven't watched that video, go back and check it out. We personally want to move on from T.Y. Hilton. So if you do that, I think you almost have to bring back Zach Pascal, not as your number 2, not even as your number 3, but maybe your number 4. And I think, you just have a guy that he's never going to be a number 1 receiver. Let's just be honest. He's limited in a lot of ways. But he is very consistent in run blocking. He is very consistent in that department. He is a hard worker. He's a guy that's had to earn everything, since coming into the league, like you mentioned. So I think that's the kind of guy you want in your team. Knowing that he's not going to be a top option at receiving. He's shown some flashes like he can produce, but I don't want him to have to be the number 2 receiver. I feel like you can upgrade from a Zach Pascal while still keeping Zach Pascal on your roster. And if Zach Pascal's your number 4, your number 3 and your number 2 are pretty good then, right? You feel pretty good about that. And if you have an injury, Zach Pascal can step up if need be. He's shown that. He was a Colts leading receiver in 2019. Everybody seems to forget that, but he was. And so I think he definitely is a guy that is deserving of being brought back. He didn't have a great season last year, but how much do you put that on the quarterback versus him? Because he's had success with the other quarterbacks the Colts have had, whether that be Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett, or Phillip Rivers. Every one of them is like Zach Pascal. So I'd bring him back for another year. I think he certainly has earned at least one more shot here with Indianapolis this next season.
Right. I mean, people have kind of been giving us crap, right? About saying, "Oh, you guys want us to move on and get these great guys, but yet you want to talk about, keeping guys like Al-Qadim Muhammad, who actually we're about to talk about here in a second, and you want to keep guys like Zach Pascal on the roster." Yeah, you have to keep a bunch of guys on the roster. We're not saying to make them focal points. You don't want a Zach Pascal to be your number 2 wide receiver going forward in a time when he's only any season he's only ever gotten 5 touchdowns. And that's with some really freaking good quarterbacks. Okay. So we're not insinuating that Zach Pascal should be a focal point. What we're saying is that a guy like Zach Pascal should be around for a couple reasons. One, he is productive when you actually get him involved in the offense just a little bit. Get him involved a few times, and he does make a few big plays for you, especially in the red zone. And he's a great run blocker. He embodies what being a Colt is all about, being physical. And this guy is probably the most physical wide receiver that we have on the roster currently. I mean, no disrespect to Michael Pittman. I mean, Michael Pittman's also 6'5". So I don't want to hear anything about it. Zach Pascal's a little shorter, and he has to deal with some other things. I saw Zach Pascal in 2020 put a grown 280-pound man on his ass. Okay, so when Michael Pittman does that, then you can come to me and say he blocks as hard as Zach Pascal. But either way, Zach Pascal, to me, like you said, Cody, I think it'd be nice to bring him around again to try and keep him on this roster, remind him of the importance that he provides for this wide receiver unit outside of on-field production. We'll see if another team wants to give him a shot. I mean, he definitely has shown he can be productive. He's limited in that production, but he definitely has shown he can be productive. And there are other teams that might think he's worth the option. Another guy here that I mentioned, that was Al-Qadim Muhammad, that I just rambled on just a second ago. Colts brought him back as a free agent last offseason, paid him $3 million to come back. Going to be 27 going into the offseason. You mentioned it earlier, Cody, I think in a recent video, that Al-Qadim Muhammad of the defensive end group was the highest leading sacker for the Indianapolis Colts. I think, what did you say? It was 7?
No, it was like 5.5. So that tells you how bad
5.5,
it was.
6. So, Al-Qadim Muhammad, we know, has always been a role guy for us, right? And that's the thing. Another reason why I wonder why people flinch out about it, because, like, I don't mind paying for an occasional guy to be your backup. That's not a problem. You want to keep some of those backups around because, they help out in the long term. So my issue is that I actually believe that somebody's going to pay Al-Qadim Muhammad probably around $5 million I think someone's going to do that. Someone's going to offer him $5 million this next year. And I don't think with some of the other guys that the Colts are going to want to keep on the roster that they need to keep Al-Quadin Muhammad on it for being anything over $3 million. I just don't think it happens.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those sacks, you do kind of look at it like they came in spurts. Like 2 of those came against the Texans. So it wasn't ever like a consistent thing for Al-Quadin Muhammad. It was just a certain game he'd have a really good game, whether that was a coverage sack or whatever. I never felt like he was a great pass rusher. I still don't feel that way. I just feel like he was the best of a very bad situation. I'll put it that way. And even so, I feel like Kwity Paye and Kamoko Toure, for example, are much better pass rushers than Al-Quadin Muhammad, even though the stats don't necessarily reflect that this last season. So, yeah, I mean, I would personally be okay if you moved on from him. If a team decides, oh, we see those 6.5 sacks or however many he had, and they're like, we're going to pay him $5 million. All right, see you later, man. Good luck. Like, I don't think he's that big of a loss, personally. Like, Danico Autry, I was pounding the table last offseason. Please keep Danico Autry. Not so much for Al-Quadin Muhammad, because I just don't feel like he's that great of a player. He's solid, but I don't think he's ever going to be anything special.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely appreciate what Al-Quadin Muhammad is for a guy that is as small as he is, for the position that he plays his freaking heart out, and he's actually pretty dang good in the run department too, because he has that little bit of extra speed to track guys on the outside. So that certainly helps. But yeah, like you said, I'm not too worried about it. Next guy here, Sam Tevye. So we talked about him in a recent video. Got paid $2.5 million to be the backup center or to compete for the tackle position. When we lost Anthony Costanzo, right? We're like 27 years old. He's had some good and bad moments when he was with the Chargers. So you thought maybe he'll be all right. I mean, he wasn't spectacular, but we thought if he was going to be, somewhat competitive, then okay, we could live with it. Well, preseason comes around and he got blown up by the second and third stringers in the preseason. I mean, we saw in the Colts off season when they were doing training camp, he couldn't block anyone. He was getting blown up by Ben Banigou all training camp long. Kwity Paye just bulldozed him into oblivion a few times. So you were like, man, this guy is bad. So, I mean, Cody, is it even worth keeping Sam Tevye around for $1 million or so to be able to fill a roster spot, or do you think you just go with somebody else at this point?
Tell you what you do. You go to your nearest, I don't know what the term is. I guess you go to your nearest hardware store, you get a big traffic cone, and you put it at left tackle, and you save $1 million. That's what I would do.
Oh, man.
I don't even know if you can get traffic cones there, but wherever you can get traffic cones, you'd be better served to put that at left tackle than Sam Tevye. I'm not touching that. We said a 30-foot pole. I'm not touching that with a 3 million foot pole. No, thank you. I'll gladly put you out there, Derek, at left tackle before I trust my quarterback's life with Sam Tevye, because my quarterback's going to die.
Yeah.
He's going to die. So no, thank you. No, thank you. Moving on.
I'd much rather just spend a 6th round pick on a tackle and probably put them out there versus Sam Tevye. I'll be completely honest. I know some people might say that's a stretch, but with what I just saw from Sam Tevye last training camp, I don't know if that's that far-fetched. I mean, Will Fries was better. And Will Fries was a freaking 7th round pick. Okay. Then he thought he should have been drafted a lot sooner. Some people thought he was going to get drafted in like the 4th or 5th round, but either way, I mean, Will Fries even held his own in that Arizona game better than what Sam Tevye ever did in the preseason.
Yep. We thought that Raven Clark was bad. No, Sam Tevye was a new level.
Was worse.
He was worse. Somehow he was worse. So I don't know what the deal is with us like getting worse tackles in the offseason, but I'm praying that stops this offseason. We never have to hear the name Sam Tevye ever again.
Julian Davenport actually look half decent. I mean, which is hard to do because Julian Davenport definitely wasn't great this year at all at any of the points that he had to go in. I mean, Julian Davenport got benched in the second week of the season, and the only reason he ever played again was because of the fact that in the Arizona game we were down to our last few linemen, and even then was getting eaten up by Chandler Jones the whole game. I mean, that's understandable, but still. But yeah, so we're good with that one. We're on the same page. The last guy that we'll talk about here for this video, and that is Isaac Rochelle. Colts, one of the few moves that the Colts made in free agency last year, signed him for $2.5 million to come over and, fill one of those roles. I appreciate what Isaac Rochelle did for Indianapolis. He was trying to fill that role and he had a couple good plays and a couple different times. But, when you look at the moves that the Colts should have made in the defensive end market versus what they did make in Isaac Rochelle, it's clear that this was not what the Colts were wanting out of Isaac Rochelle.
Yeah. No, I'm not bringing him back. He didn't do anything of note. There's a lot. This defensive line room's already super clogged as it is. I don't see a role from him personally. I don't see him doing anything. Didn't show me much at all. So no, I wouldn't bring him back.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way. You have some other defensive ends that you need to focus on bringing back, and I just don't think that Isaac Rochelle is one of those that you need to worry about. All right, well, that's going to do it for this tier, guys. Again, we're basing this off of how they got paid from the last season. We'll keep going into more and more of these guys as we go along. Let us know your thoughts in the comments on how you guys felt about this group of guys and whether or not you bring them back or not. Thank you again so much for the continued support. And as always, go Colts.